I think we're about ready to get started. Well, I like the idea of staying home and getting all the meeting over with the Zoom. I enjoy coming out and visiting with folks, so I'm glad to see some stalwarts. Okay, Chris, tonight, the main thing we've got going is the election of the officers. And there's several positions that we've had the nominating committee come forward and recommend. And so you'll have an opportunity. Now, unfortunately, in this transition time, I messed up and didn't get ballots printed so that we could actually do it. We'll have to do it by hand vote. And so we'll do that after the kind of in the middle of the presentation. So we got some scholarship students and then Christy has some things she's doing. So in terms of the officers that are here, I'd like to give them an opportunity to speak or say anything. Now, Cecil's not here. Christy will when I turn the program over to her. Chad, you have anything?
Yeah, you know, right about now, a big amount of.
Hang on a minute. Okay.
Most of us know right about now there's not a big nectar source out there, but if you take a walk about, you can still find a few things. I was out in a hayfield this morning and saw some fleabane and a few other things that I was surprised to see, some asters. And so there's a few things out there, but it's few and far between. So, you know, the critical point at this point in time is as the temperatures start to cool down, we just need to get in, check the resources on our hives to ensure that we've got, you know, close to 120 pounds of honey or some other source of, you know, food opportunity if they weren't able to put back enough resources of honey to get through the winter. So it's important to get your heft test and check the weight of your hives. And if you need to supplemental feed, the next 3 or 4 days are going to be warm enough to do that. They'll take liquid anytime it's over 50 degrees. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Janet, do you have anything? Let's see her. Okay. All right. Robert? Okay. Jolie? Nothing now? Okay. Andy?
Since November's Veterans Day, the 11th, how about the veterans stand up? I know there's at least 1, 2, 3. Cecil's not here. Another one back there. I know that. How about a hand of applause for these guys? I know that. What branch is service? Army, Navy, Air Force, Navy. I thank these veterans.
Cheryl? Our editor, you have anything? Okay. I don't see Becky here tonight. Okay. She's coming. Okay. Joe, you have anything? Okay. I think that pretty well handles it. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Christy now. And I don't know whether you're going to start with the scholarship students or what we're going to do. So I'll leave that up to you and Jolie.
Well, first, I think I'll start with this award that we need to give. As you know, I coordinate the Kansas State Fair, and we give away, the Kansas Honey Producers gives away 2 awards, one to a youth and one to an adult. We call it the Sweepstakes Award. And Usually we give this away at the banquet at the Kansas Honey Producers, but tonight we have our youth recipient here, which is Oliver Pennington. And if Oliver would come forward to accept this plaque. So Oliver entered several categories in the youth department, as well as one category, cut comb, in the adult department. So congratulations. Do you want to do scholarship kids first? So I'll give the mic to Jolie to introduce our scholarship students.
Today, we have one scholarship student that's going to present. The other one is processing turkeys today. So they was quite timely. So anyway, our youth scholarship program is actually one of the areas that we spend the most of our money on, and we spend between $600 and $700 for each student. Plus, we have a mentor program where the mentor works with the student, and I really want to thank Chad for mentoring this family this year. And this family, Levi's family, Levi will be coming up here in a second, but Levi's family is really the kind of family we love to see. The whole family got involved. His sister got a hive too. Cecil and I had the privilege of going out there several times, and we're just really proud that they were in the program, and I'm really proud of the job that Chad has done in taking this over. I really appreciate it. So Levi, if you would like to come up, I'll get your program up here, or attempt to. I should say I've gotten 6 or 7 applications for this upcoming year, and we'll be scheduling interviews with them soon. Okay. You want to forward it yourself, or you want me to do it? You can just hit, oh, okay, you do it. Thank you.
So my name is Levi, and I'm going to be talking about my year in beekeeping this year. So on February 28th, we assembled the bottom board at my first mentor, Steve's house. And we also did a 1 box. And then on March 6th, we assembled the frames at our house with help from my sister Lyra, and my cousin Gavin was visiting that day too, so he helped too. On March 7th, the next day, we finished it building, and I built the brood box with help from my little brother. And then we finished the hives that same day. On March 31st, we started our, we put the bricks down for our hives and the bottom board. And then on April 12th, the bees arrived. And as we heard that my sister got a hive too, and when we built the hives, we worked on that too. On April 12th, the same day with the bees, I put my bee suit on for the first time, and we began dumping the bees into the hive, which was kind of strange, but it was also cool. And the next week, we released the queen. We just my queen was pretty light and light colored, and Lyra's my sister is dark. But on April 18th, my sister Lyra met a queen on her 8th birthday. And on April 28th, we did our first inspection on trying to find the queen and just checking on them. We found my queen the second inspection, and I don't remember how long it took us to find Lyra's queen, but mine's on the left. She's pretty light, and then my sister's is on the right. She's pretty dark. And we got a good picture of a scout bee collecting yellow sweet clover, which is a pretty cool picture. And then the next inspection, we had our pollen and our capped brood. And the pollen was pretty cool to see how the different colors of pollen. And then a few weeks later, we found out that I can add another brood box to my hive, and so my sister's hive wasn't progressing as quickly as mine. On May 24th, when I added my second brood box, I took one brood frame from my hive and gave it to hers. This gave her hive a boost. And in the middle picture, I dipped my fingers in the sugar water and rubbed it on the frames to get them to move upward into the box to make them start drawing faster. And then on June 17th, I added my first honey super, and I did the same thing, dipping my fingers in the sugar water, rubbing it on the frame. And then September 1st, we pulled the supers, and I sprayed the fume board with Honeybee Gone, and it actually smelled pretty good. And then I was surprised to see how quickly all the bees moved out of the box. And then the frames that the bees were still on, we used the bee brush and brushed them off. And then we extracted the honey a few days later, and I used the hot knife, which is pretty cool, and the capping scratcher, which is a lot different than the hot knife. And my hive made 60 pounds of honey, and my sister made 30 pounds. On September 10th, we jarred our honey. I jarred 4 quarts, 18 pints, and 18 half pints from my hive, and 1 pint and 29 half pints from my sister's hive. And then we rendered the beeswax to make chapstick and lotion bars. And it was pretty cool seeing how clean it gets from really dirty to really clean. And then on November 12th, I made chapstick with our fresh beeswax. Thanks to Mr. Cecil and Mr. Jolie for teaching us at the class. And on that same day, I also made lotion bars with our fresh beeswax. And that's the end of my exciting bee journey this year.
Thank you, Levi. Pretend like I'm handing you an award because I forgot to bring it. So Here. While we're talking about beeswax and stuff, the third Thursday group from the Kansas honey producers this Thursday, Gary and Ginger Reuter are presenting at 7 o'clock by Zoom on beeswax, cleaning beeswax and making candles. So if you're interested in that, I think that'll be a really good presentation. There's a link to register for it. It's free in the news, in the buzzer, or you can go to the Kansas Honey Producers website. So that's all I have.
So tonight we're privileged to have Joe Patrick here. She's great with plants and she's showed us how to do some things with some sedums and different things. And tonight she's going to talk about seed collection. So come on down, Joe.
Good evening. And good evening at home, Zoom people. Tonight, I'm going to talk about inexpensive ways that we can increase pollen and nectar sources for our honeybees. And we can do that in the form of collecting seeds and planting them ourselves, thus saving a trip to an expensive garden center or the big box store, hopefully. I have found, and I'm sure this is common with everyone here in this room, that we have lots of nectar and pollen sources from February to the 1st of July. And then sure enough, there's not much out there for our bees. Not until about September when we start getting these fall blooming plants that our bees can start working. So it's always been my goal to try to fill in the gaps. But I find that my bees have a tendency to eat a lot of their food stores there in July and August, and then they're playing catch up in the fall when September rolls around. So that I end up having to feed my bees. And our goal as beekeepers should be not to have to feed our bees. We want to have a continual flow of nectar sources out there so that they bring in their own food. If you're going to collect seeds for nectar and pollen sources, the first thing you need to do is to identify what you are hoping to collect. You need to decide, learn, whatever it takes to find out what's missing in your environment or adding to something in your environment that the bees prefer to work. And you can only do this by being able to identify. You also need to identify that plant so that you know what the germination requirements are for that and what are the cultural requirements. Does that species prefer full sun, damp soil, dry soil? You get the picture. There are lots of tools out there on the internet to help you identify, and unlike a lot of beekeeping forums, these are usually fairly factual. They don't come up with wild small hive beetle control methods and so forth. There are lots of books out there. I have some up here if you'd like to look at them after the session. But and a lot of them are localized. They are meant for our part of the country. Also, our local K-State, your local K-State master gardeners are there for you at the extension office. That's what they're there for. Take a picture, send it to them if you need something identified, and they'll get right back to you. They're there spring, summer, and fall. If they're not there, the horticultural extension agent can answer those questions for you. When it comes to collecting seeds, keep it local. Don't collect seeds when you and your family take a vacation out to California. Chances are those seeds will not do well here. They may even be invasive species that we don't want in Kansas. Also, be a good steward. Don't collect in designated natural areas, say small prairie patches and so forth. Those are usually managed by people or groups of people, and they have plans for those seeds. They need that to keep replenishing that prairie there. Also, if you see something on private property that you would like to collect seeds from, get permission. Also, don't over collect. Don't go into an area and take all of one type of species of the seed. Leave something for nature. A lot of our birds depend upon these seeds to live on through the winter. Also, you would be surprised at the amount of seeds that are just in one seed head. And it does vary a little bit, but you would be surprised. And never collect from an endangered species. That's why another reason plant identification is important. Leave that seed collecting to the experts because they probably have better luck and better skill at germinating those seeds. Also, bear in mind that some seeds are spread by wind, such as in milkweeds. When the milkweed pod opens up, the wind carries those seeds far and wide. Also some seeds, some plants, when their seeds ripen, they explode. Witch hazel is one of those types of plants, and I can vouch for that. Around near my witch hazel, I have some large pots that they're permanent. I can't move them. And so in the spring, when I go out there, I see all these little seedlings coming up in these pots. So I simply dig those up and put them into individualized pots until I can find a home for them somewhere. Some seeds are favorites of birds, and so you may have to beat the birds to these seeds. And I have a picture demonstrating that in a little bit. So when you go out collecting seeds, I would encourage you to go early while things are in bloom. We're a little late in the season. We've had a hard freeze. If something is in bloom, it's as Chad said, it's kind of few and far between. And it's mostly asters at this point. But you're going to want to do some advanced scouting, perhaps driving around to see what is blooming. And if you see bees working it, that's a bonus. You know that that's preferred by our honeybees. I encourage you to take your cell phone, take pictures. That will help you locate where you found this plant at. You may need to use a map or something so that you can go back to that when the seed has matured and collect that seed. When it's time to go collect the seed, carry scissors or a sharp knife, some paper bags, and a Sharpie. And on the paper bags, you're going to write with the Sharpie what the species is, where you collected it, and the date that you collected it. That will help you keep everything straight. Some stalks are just so thick that they're hard to cut with scissors, and then you will need the knife. But do be aware that when you jerk some of those plants, they can shatter and the seed heads just disperse the seeds everywhere, and you won't get as many seeds as you had hoped for. So you may have to collect a few more seed pods. I'd like to point out in these pictures here, this is all one plant throughout the year. This is a New England Aster, real easy to identify. It's in bloom and it has lots of foliage still on there. And that was back in September. Here a few weeks ago, it started to go to seed. You can see the seed heads forming there. You can still kind of identify it if you know what foliage to look for. Well, here a week ago, it was like this. And so if you were to come across this plant and not know what it was, you might be a bit confused. To me, it looks a little bit like ironweed and a few other little native plants that are out there. So it's a good idea to start early and keep an eye on these plants as the season progresses. Now, I like to say that there are no hard, fast rules when it comes to Mother Nature. There's always something in the mix that changes it up. But typically, most seeds mature about a month after the blooming ends. And you can tell by doing squeezing the seed between your thumb and your forefinger. That's a test that you can do. On this paper towel is seed I collected from an annual vine, great purple hyacinth vine. I think I got that right. And you can see the seed over here on the right. It's like green and colored. And if you were to squeeze that between your thumb and your forefinger, it would be squishy. We call that the Hardnose Stage. That's immature seed. Here on the left, some of the pods had ripened already, and you can tell because they have a nice dark seed coat. It's nice and firm. If you were to squeeze that, it would be very rigid. That would be called the Hardnose Stage. This picture here is one I took talking about trying to beat the birds to the seeds. I pulled up in the driveway, sitting in the truck, and I see our little neighborhood goldfinches. And this picture here is maybe a little bit misleading, but they were eating the immature seeds. The purple coneflowers were still in bloom, and they were eating the seeds before they ever had a chance to even mature. So in a case like that, you may need to, if you want to collect some seed, you may need to put a little bag over that, a mesh bag, an organza bag, tie it on there just to keep some seed for yourself. I personally love the little goldfinches, and I won't compete them for the seed. After you've collected your seed, you're going to need to separate the seed from the chaff. And you want to start with dry seed. So if it's rained or there's morning dew or something like that, you're going to want to spread your seed out and put it in a room with some ventilation or a dehumidifier, even an infrared lamp over it to help you dry that seed out. The larger the seed, the more you're going to want to spread it out. If you've collected some fruit that still has the pulp on it, you're going to want to remove that and then dry your seed. The top picture here, this is for serious seed savers. I've seen those before. There's a wire mesh in a frame, and they take the seed and they rub it. And when they're rubbing it, the seed drops to the tray down below and the chaff stays on top. For our purposes, we probably don't need that. That's overkill. You could accomplish the same thing by wearing some gloves and rubbing the seed in between your hands. There's a number of ways that you can accomplish this. After you have stored your seed, after you've collected your seed, you're going to need to store it. You're going to want to store it in a dark, cool, low humidity environment. And I use my refrigerator for this. Seeds, it doesn't matter, annual or perennial seeds or native seeds. If they are stored at below 50% humidity And at 50 degrees or lower, they should last for a year. Also, you're going to want to store your seed in labeled with the date you collected it and where you located, where you collected it from. You're going to want to put it in some type of Ziploc bag, a mason jar, something to keep the excess moisture out. This is some terminology I just wanted to familiarize you with. This is where it gets a little intimidating, but stratification is simply how the tree, the seed, the process it goes through in order to be able to germinate. Mother Nature handles this, but humans need to imitate this so that we can get the seed to germinate. Dry stratification is exposing the seed to freezing temperatures for 30 to 60 days. That doesn't sound hard. You could put seeds in the freezer. Moist stratification is mixing the seed in with some damp peat moss or some sand and refrigerating it for 3 to 4 weeks. Inoculation. I admit this is something I have never done and probably never will do. If I need something that the seed requires inoculation, I'll probably buy it. And the seed distributor will have treated that seed for me. But that's treating the seed with nitrogen fixing bacteria. Some seeds, the seed coat is so hard that water and air can't permeate that seed coat. So you literally have to scratch the seed with a file or some sandpaper, sometimes hot water. Sometimes nature does this on its own. If a fire will cause some seeds to germinate, burning of like they do down in the Flint Hills down south, that will cause seed to germinate. Sometimes, like I said, there's no hard, fast rules. Some species need a certain type of stratification. Some species require multiples of these in order to germinate. So that's where you have to know what you're planting and do your homework. Now you're ready to plant your seed, and it's very similar to planting flower bulbs. You want to plant your seed at a depth about 2 to 3 times the width or the diameter of the seed. Again, there are exceptions to this rule. Again, another reason for doing your homework. Our garden seeds are really easy to, like corn and green beans. Those are a piece of cake. You can easily handle that seed. You can tell how deep it's supposed to be. It's really easy. When it comes to some of these flowering species, the seed is so fine that you literally have to spread it on top of damp soil and then sprinkle a little bit of sterile potting soil on top of that, and then use a mister to wet down that soil that you just sprinkled on top. Using a watering can or something like that may literally wash that seed away. Some plants like Culver's root are so tiny that they just recommend that you propagate by division instead of trying to start the seed. They're that tiny. So you've planted your seed and now you're waiting for germination. And this is where the two annuals and natives or perennials are different. You never want to expose your annual seeds to any type of freezing temperatures. So storing the seed in the refrigerator is great. Also, you want to sow those seeds after the frost-free date. In Johnson County, that happens to be tax day. I like to push the envelope a little bit and plant them end of March and watch the weather. If they're predicting bad weather, I'll bring them into the garage and then I'll hustle them back out. Now your natives or your perennials, germination usually occurs between daytime temperatures of 70 to 80 degrees and with nighttime temperatures of 45 to 60 degrees. What you need is for the soil to warm up enough for germination to take place. So to learn more, I've listed a few sources here, but the first book is the Holy Grail. And we have this book in our library. You can check it out. It's Garden Plants for Honeybees by Lintner. He does a fantastic job. There's pictures, and he tells you to what degree that honeybees prefer that plant. He even tells you what color of pollen it produces. So that is a wonderful book to have for a reference tool around the house. Lastly, I wanted to show you how I start seeds. And I didn't know this even had a name. Becky asked about it. And what was the name, Becky? Well, nobody knows. I heard this many years ago from a master gardener. And she was talking about, well, this is how I start my seeds. And I thought, well, that's easy. I can do that. And I start both perennials, natives, and annuals using this method. And I think you'll see that I am accomplishing dry stratification and moist stratification at the same time. And I think that's why this works. But give me just a second here. When I'm ready to plant my natives or my perennials, I start right after New Year's. The holidays are over and you're thinking, well, gee, it's really cold. Yeah, it's really cold. I'm stratifying that seed by doing this that early. The annuals, like I said, I wait until late March or April to start. But I like to use these because, number one, well, I have lots of reasons, but they're sure handy. These are seed flats. I buy them at Grass Pad, and I buy what they call cell packs. This looks like just what you would buy your plants in at the garden center, these cell packs. You don't have to use those. You can use all kinds of things. You can even make seed starters out of toilet paper rolls if you want to. But I start with sterilized potting soil, and I've already done that with this. I filled that, and then I drenched this. I soaked the seed thoroughly, and I allowed it to drain out. If the container that you have to hold your seeds in doesn't have drainage, make it drain. You need that. Otherwise, the seed is just going to sit there and rot. So I take an old knife and I poke holes in these flats. You can buy them, but for some reason, Grass Pad doesn't carry the ones with the holes. So I make holes. And then I go along, and if the seed is large enough, I will poke holes in each one of these individual pots and plant my seed, come back and pinch those shut. If it, like I said earlier, if it's so tiny, I literally just sprinkle the seed on top, come along with some more sterilized potting soil and sprinkle that on top, and then take a mister to mist that top soil. Next, you want to label your flat. And again, you want to put what the plant is, when you collected it, when you started the seed. I always like to know that. How long did it take to germinate, and where you got the seed from. Now, I will warn you that masking tape will not hold up. Permanent markers won't hold up. Sharpies won't hold up because it's going to be several months in a moist environment in here. So I use this. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of tape. Does anybody know what this is? Is it for plumbing, electricity? It's like foil. HVAC, okay. I use this, and you can simply write on it, and it's like writing on tin foil. And then I apply that to my flat. After that, I come with a plastic bag, hopefully big enough. I've sometimes pieced together 2 bags, and you're going to put your tray inside the bag. And then I'm going to take the tape and seal this up tightly. You can use clear plastic, you can use opaque plastic. I've even used white trash bags. Trash bags are great, but you want to seal this up because you're creating a self-contained environment. This will be very similar to a greenhouse. And then I'm going to come back with my trusty tape and label the bag itself. Again, with the same information. What the species is, when I planted it, when I collected the seed, and where I got the seed from. Then I take this tray and I put it out in the sun, outside. Just set it out there. I have a large deck, and so I tend to line them up along the deck, but you could set these in on the ground. It wouldn't matter. And I let nature take its course. Rain, sleet, snow, whatever happens, that's Mother Nature's way of getting that seed to germinate. So in about March, if it's a perennial or a native, I start watching for the seeds to start germinate. And when I see that if 1 or 2 have germinated, I may leave it in there a little bit longer. But if I start to see a large number of seedlings, I'll pull it out of the bag. Until that time, there's no need to open that bag. Leave it in a closed environment. And then I set it right back out in the sun. That's when I start to monitor for water. When it dries, then I water it. Most of our potting soil has some fertilizer in it, so there's no need to worry about that. Now, I use these type of containers, these cell packs, which seems kind of self-indulgent, but I am able to use the flats anyway, year after year until they just become too brittle. But I am really bad about, in the spring, I get busy, I've got too much to do, and I don't have time to set these out in the garden. And most of the time, I don't know where I want to put them anyway. So they have plenty of room in here. I have been guilty of moving these up into bigger pots and then planting them in the fall when I figured out a place to put them. So, and you're probably thinking, well, gee, I could have bought that 9 months ago and had a really great plant. But I assure you, on natives and perennials, they will catch up over the winter. During the winter, when the soil is warmer than you think it is, those roots will just be growing, and next spring they'll look like they were full size. They'll just be great. The annuals, on the other hand, again, you will be getting a late start, but they will catch up too. It may take until June to do so, but I found that the annuals do catch up. Well, I don't see any glazed over eyes. So I think everybody understood that, and I didn't overwhelm you with stratification. Are there any questions? Any questions on Zoom? All right. They're kind of flimsy, and I have used those in a pinch, but they are really thin. And I have to admit, the most trouble I have had is when the dog runs over the flats of seedlings, and that's wherever that foot was, those seeds aren't germinating. And I had one cat or one dog that liked to lick the condensation off the top. And again, that messed up germination really well. So, yes, Becky. Yeah.
Coneflowers in here, and so they just put their dirt at the bottom and kind of sprinkled in some seeds. They weren't very specific, and then sealed it up, and it's like, they had them in a snowbank.
Yes.
I mean, it was like at the edge of the garden.
Yes.
And they like, it was like, don't forget about them, don't mess with them.
Yeah.
But, I like your trays, that's a little more organized, but I, you know, that was. It made it sound like something I could do.
Becky
pointed out a video that she has seen of people that use
milk jugs to start seeds, and they sowed numerous seeds in a milk jug and then covered it and set it in a snowbank. And I prefer this method because, again, I get busy and I don't have time to, when those seedlings need to be transplanted, I am usually busy and I don't get to it in time. Robert? You have
So there's a question Veronica Sellers is asking, just to clarify, that you only plant one species per flat so that they all germinate and grow at the same time. Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
And if I don't have enough seeds, I may pull the seed packs out that I didn't use. Yes, that's a good point that I've neglected. Yeah, Cheryl?
Do you ever have any problem with mice and stuff getting into your?
Mice? No.
I
don't.
know.
And we have plenty of mice around my neighborhood. Yes, Robert?
Clark is asking, what's your favorite way to store your seeds? Does she see spice bottles on the table? Those look like pill.
These are pill bottles. And to be doubles, these are, someone gave me these. So they don't have much information on them, just what they are. But I would put these in a Ziploc baggie and then put them in the refrigerator. Or you could also put seeds that need dry stratification in the freezer. I do have some here that I collected this year. This is a hardy hibiscus. And actually, I have a picture of that. The seed heads right here. This is the hardy hibiscus, and you can actually see the seeds in there. They're about the size of radish seeds. So easy to collect. The seed heads are real brittle, and you just simply break those seed heads open. But I have them in a Ziploc bag. I have what it is, the date I collected it. I have front yard. And I wrote a little, because I have a couple of different varieties, I wrote that these were white flowers with rose centers. So I'd know what I had. Okay. All right. Christy, I'll turn it back over to you. Yes.
Thank you, Joe. What a lot of good information there to collect seeds, especially for someone like me that's never done anything like that. I think we're ready for elections. Is Ed in here, Ed Darlington? We ready for elections? So what's going to happen now? That wouldn't be very pretty. If I'd have known that, I'd have never been program chair.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to handle this two different ways. We have the people on Zoom that have ballots. Unfortunately, I think I'm the one that's at fault and messed up. And I don't have ballots for this. In other years we have. So we'll do on the Zoom people, they have one ballot with all 4 offices. And so we'll go through that for the people on Zoom. Here, we'll go through it individually for each office holder, and we'll have a hand raising so that we can kind of keep track of individually on that. So we have expired terms for 2 people, and we have replacements for 2 other officers. So there's 4 people that or 4 positions that we're looking at holding an election for. For my position, I volunteered to go ahead and continue another 2 years, as did Chad. He's the 2nd vice president for plants. So both of us volunteered to continue on for another 2 years in the same position we've been in. And then on the 2 new people, nominating committee came up with, for first vice president, which is the program chair, we have Matthew Brandis. And for the fun day coordinator, we have Jay Francis. Okay, so for the Zoom people, go ahead and you should have access to a ballot, and go ahead and fill those out then. And yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up from Robert. For here, we're going to do each one individually. So if anyone wants to volunteer for any of these positions, feel free to. Typically, we've not had that in the past. But so the first one up would be my position for president. So we have a hand to retain me, or okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Second one that we're going to vote on is, like I say, because he's volunteered to continue on, is Chad Gilliland for the plant, the 2nd vice president. Okay. Thank you. Okay. For the new program chair, Matthew Brandis. Okay. And for Fun Day coordinator, Jay Francis. Thank you. Okay. That's it. And the results, I'll leave up to you have for the. Okay. And all right. I think every year is going to go smoother, and it seems to get more chaotic. So I don't think it's going to change. All right. Thank you. Christy? You have something more to go? Okay. Thank you, folks. We'll ask if when you pick up, put your chair back up. Oh, yeah. Talk about somebody that doesn't have their head on straight. Let me get the tickets here. Thank you.
So I did bring some starters, art trees. I've got some mimosa, here, and then I've got an American linden up there as well that I've got about maybe a dozen and a half of those that I started from seed 2 years ago. And so if anybody's interested, we've got some of those available at the store. But I brought one as a giveaway.
What does a mimosa tree look like?
Mimosa has a very lacy compound leaf with multiple stems, normally a 15 to 20 foot ornamental decorative tree with a pink to a pinkish red, very fuzzy, very fluffy flower, and great for most pollinators that appreciate that as a good nectar source. Tends to flower midsummer. And then the American linden, as most of us know, is just an absolute magnet for honeybees, bumblebees, and most any bee. But you know, you get a good mature linden tree in your yard, and it'll buzz for weeks on end in the summertime as a great nectar producing plant.
Okay, so I've got some tickets here. I'll pull out. Like he's covered, there's also 2 packets of Bee Culture magazine. There's a container for distributing drinks. Some vegetables here. Turnip. Thank you. There's several of them in there. Looks like a salt and pepper shaker, the linden, and the mimosas. Okay, first ticket pulled out ends in 1918. There we go.
Speed,
I hope
and they'll put on some diameter.
I hope so. If my rabbits.
But those mimosa, I mean, they're only, we planted, I started with seed this spring.
They're trying.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, the second one is 904. 904. And one interesting thing about a fully mature flowering tree, you know, they're basically equivalent of an acre of flowers.
Yeah, the
So-
sheer number of floral sets that they can put on is, you know,
Yes.
excellent.
Okay. Next Rolex, 1914.
Not big, not big. They can go small.
So Chad, the rest of the winter, how is the best way to keep?
I would go ahead and plant them now.
Oh, okay.
Just put something around them,
Give them a
just so they
little-
can remember that's where it's at, because they are so small.
So Steve doesn't know what.
And I would say that if you get into a whole lot of snow this winter, I would put some type of sleeve or something around it, because the rabbits will want to chew it off as a food source.
Next ticket is 909. Next ticket is 915. 915.
How you been, Chris?
Eight, 9, 4. 8, 9, 4. Nine, 0, 2. 9, 0, 2. 917,
917.
Take on that.
Nine zero eight. 908.
Nine
911. 911.
Eight
895. 895. Let's take all back. 901. 901. Okay. 907. 907.
Oh, Cheryl.
910. 910. Like I started to say earlier, as you exited, you would pick up your chairs and put it back on the racks and take it from there. Thank you for all coming.